on the same terms that we teach people how to treat us, people are who we tell them they are. If you are constantly pointing out how somebody doesn't ever think about you, doesn't consider your feelings, isn't thoughtful, is selfish, guess what's going to happen? They are going to be that. If you tell someone they're great, they're going to be great. If you tell someone they're thoughtful, they're going to be thoughtful. If you tell someone they're a loser, they're going to be a loser. If you tell someone that they're a jerk, they're going to be a jerk. Nothing is anything until we name it. And again, if I believe that you're a jerk, my mind's going to seek out everything that you're doing that makes you a jerk to make me right. If I tell you that you're thoughtful and wonderful and kind and caring and generous, that means that my mind's going to actively seek out those things. And people just start to show up that way. I was having some friction in my relationship with my husband. I was having some, I myself was not being able to emotionally fulfill myself in that relationship. And I thought about how, how all those good qualities my mind started overlooking because they're not important, because they're not a threat. And my mind was only seeking out that which was going to hurt me or let me down or somewhere that I thought that I had to preserve myself. And so I said, okay, guess what? I'm going to start looking for the good things. I'm going to start looking for all the awesome things that my husband does, just like I look for all the awesome things with strangers whenever I first meet them, or people whenever I first meet them, or my friends, or my coaching clients, whoever. I'm looking for the greatness in other people. I'm going to start looking for the greatness in my husband. And I'm going to start finding all the times that I can praise him for that I can affirm that I can tell him. So when we're in the kitchen making dinner together and he says, you want me to go ahead and get the butter out of the fridge? Instead of just saying, yeah, and keep doing what I'm doing, I say, that's a great idea. That you are always so thoughtful. You knew that I was going to need that butter, and here you are thinking about how you can help me out and get it. I so appreciate that. That's amazing. Now at first, it could seem a little odd, because he's not used to me behaving this way. But nobody that I have found really doesn't like praise. Everybody really likes it. They like validation. Love, acceptance is what we're seeking from everybody all the time. So when I started telling him, you are so thoughtful, you are so patient, you are so understanding, you are a genius. You cannot do anything wrong. You always make the best decisions. Guess what started happening? I would turn around and he had done something thoughtful for me. Because subconsciously what happens in the mind is, she thinks that I'm thoughtful. She's going to expect me to be thoughtful. I better do something thoughtful. And it's not as black and white as that in the thought process, at least it's not in my mind. But it's the same thing. My husband has a thing about when he goes to bed, he doesn't like a lot of chatting and conversation. Well, a lot of times that's when things come to my mind. And I don't mean to, but I start a lot of conversations whenever he's trying to go to sleep and trying to go to bed at night. And his response was always to me, every time we go to bed, you got to start running your mouth. And every time we go to bed, you got to start, these conversations. Like, when are you going to get it? When are you going to learn that I want to be quiet and I want to go to bed? The little rebel in me says, I don't do that every single time that we go to bed. And it starts the whole conversation. He says what he doesn't want. He gets what he doesn't want. Me talking. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, let's look at this positive affirmation thing. How can we do it differently? If he said to me, baby, I so appreciate how thoughtful you are. I love how whenever you come into the bedroom, you don't make a peep. Then what I would do is strive to get more of that rewarded behavior, and I would strive to be that which he really wants instead of that which he doesn't want. Now, I don't consciously try to be what he doesn't want, but it's just something that comes up. I naturally am a talker. He's naturally quiet. So it took a shift. And so I realized, I was like, okay, I don't need him to say that to me for me to start behaving that way. All I have to do is make a deal with myself. So instead of the rebel, I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Instead, I'm going to be the rebel that shows that he's wrong, that I don't always talk whenever I go to bed. I made it a game within myself of how amazing I am that I can be so respectful of his needs and be quiet. So now it's like I get this inner praise thing. I got it going on inside me. I don't have to have it come in from him. But I also have taught him this kind of languaging. And I brought it up to him, not when we were going to bed, but at another time, I brought it up to him. I think tell me that I'm doing something that I don't think that I'm doing, I feel this need to defend myself. But I find that whenever you praise me for that stuff that you do like, then I want to do it more. So can we do a little experiment? And when I come to bed, instead of, you always talk whenever you come to bed, why don't you start saying to me, or better yet, instead of trying to change him, I just told him, I started telling myself that I'm quiet. And then it's like a little game that I play with myself to get what I want. Because I find that when I make suggestions to my husband on how he could do things differently, he has a little inner rebel too. And his little rebel wants to do things his way and not my way. Even though I am coming from a very good place and a good heart, and I want him to have peace and love and happiness in his life all the time too. Instead of going with that and saying, you know, you could do things differently, or you should say things differently, you should do things differently. Instead of doing it that way, I will tell him what I find and what benefits me in those situations is handling it differently. And I also will find like an example that pertains to him. And I'll say, well, you know how when you have something that you need to do, and I'm telling you all the time about how you're not doing it, how it makes you want to not do it more. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, would it be more helpful if instead of saying, you never put your stuff away, that I say, whenever I see your stuff, would it be more helpful if I said, I see that your stuff's there on the table, but I trust that you're going to put it away. I know you're going to do it. And he's like, yeah, because I am going to do it. But every time you say, your stuff's still sitting on the table, it makes me not want to do it. I said, okay, well, since that makes you want to do it, maybe we could do that for each other. And maybe in those areas that instead of saying, I don't think you're going to do it, or you need to go do it now on my terms, maybe if we just had a little more faith and we vocalize that to one another, you know, do you think that we could try that? And he's like, that makes sense. Because I related to him, I spoke his language, gave him an example that applies to him, I made him right instead of making him wrong, and I allowed him the opportunity to choose to do things a little bit different. So if he speaks into me that which he wants to see, and just by the natural laws of the universe, I'm going to start showing up that way. In the same turn, if I start telling him all the good things about him, he's going to show that first. And just experiment with it. Just play with it. I mean, because again, I know that I could not go through the day with getting too much affirmation and too much validation and too much praise and being told that I'm good too much. I just don't think that that's possible. So I believe it must be true for other people as well. So just try that. Find those people that kind of always irk you, or those little things like, you know, leaving stuff on the table or not putting the dishes away, or whatever those little things in your intimate relationships that always kind of show up that just drive you crazy. I just challenge you to try it a little bit different and try a different approach with it and see if you don't get different results, because, you know, keep doing what you're doing, gonna keep getting what you're getting. So not only do we teach people how to treat us, but people are who we tell them that they are. And if you want people to be loving and thoughtful and kind, then tell them how loving, thoughtful, and kind they are. And make it a game for yourself. I always say game because to me, I just kind of look at life like a big experiment. I'm just going to experiment. And I'm not going to label the results good or bad. They just simply are feedback. It just is what it is. So instead of right or wrong, good and bad, I just experiment and just see what kind of results I get. And if I'm in alignment and the feedback's within my line of preferences, then I keep doing it. And if it's outside my line of preferences, then I just see how I can tweak it. But if I know my mind's going to seek out that which is a threat, or what's at the forefront of my mind's at the forefront of my actions, and if I know that my beliefs create my reality, then why not just start seeking out what I want instead of what I don't want? Because what we focus on expands. And if I'm always focusing on what I don't want, I'm going to get more of what I don't want. But if I focus on what I do want, on that same law of the universe, I'm going to get more of what I do want. More of those positive behaviors. And it just makes the relationships a lot more fun anyway.